Welcome. Today we're going to be doing a specific targeted analysis of the material you shared with us.
We are.
And it's all centered on the really remarkable life, career, and enduring persona of John Candy.
It's a truly significant body of source material to synthesize.
Yeah.
Our examination today will, I think, trace his entire journey.
Right. From his beginnings in Canadian improv comedy all the way to becoming this international Hollywood icon.
And importantly, we have to use these sources to understand the private pressures he was under, the health challenges, and the really heartbreaking circumstances that led to his death at just 43.
Yeah, our goal in this extensive exploration is to go beyond just the filmography. We want to map out his professional path, yes, but also really thoughtfully explore the profound contrast between the boundless joy he gave to the public and the private conflicts he was facing. And these conflicts ranged from, severe anxiety to very serious health risks.
And the sources are incredibly comprehensive.
They really are. They track him from his high school athletic dreams right up through the final moments of his creative life.
The documents before us, they paint a complex portrait, a highly versatile and, a very successful performer whose career was marked by these incredible highs.
But also shadowed.
Exactly, shadowed by personal struggles and a tragic family history. So we'll analyze this story both chronologically and thematically, starting right where it all began, with the foundation of his comedic genius, Canada.
Let's begin there, where the story starts. John Franklin Candy was born on October 31st, 1950, in Newmarket, Ontario.
Halloween,
yes. He was raised in Toronto in a Catholic, working-class family environment. And you could argue that background gave him an innate connection to the ordinary, slightly eccentric people he would later portray so well.
I think so. And the early biographical details in the sources are particularly poignant because they establish a pattern of tragedy that would sadly repeat itself. His mother, Evangeline Valeria, was of Ukrainian and Polish descent. His father, Sidney James, died prematurely in 1955. He was only 35, and it was due to complications from heart disease.
And the sources highlight a detail that is it's truly arresting. This happened on John's 5th birthday.
On his 5th birthday.
That moment, losing his father to heart disease at such a young age, on a day that should have been a celebration, it must have been utterly defining for him.
It certainly established a severe, early-onset family history of the disease. It's an incredibly heavy detail, shaping his awareness, even if it was subconsciously, of mortality and physical vulnerability from a very, very young age.
And yet, before performance really took center stage, the sources show Candy focusing on athletics.
That's right. He attended Neil McNeil Catholic High School, and he was a star offensive tackle on the football team. He was also quite serious about his academic responsibilities, too. He served as the student council treasurer.
His ambition was clear, professional football. But that ambition was thwarted by a significant knee injury during high school.
Yes.
It forced an entire redirection of his future. When that athletic door closed, it seems like the door to the performing arts really opened up for him.
Exactly. He first pursued journalism, studying at Centennial College, before he moved on to McMaster University. And it was at McMaster that the sources confirm he officially began acting. He quickly realized his natural flair for performance was a viable path, maybe even a more exciting one than reporting.
And that path led him directly into the influential Toronto theater scene. In 1971, he made his professional debut in a small but powerful production at the Tarragon Theatre called Creeps. But the real formative move came in 1972, when he joined Toronto's branch of the Second City.
Joining the Second City was like joining a crucible of North American comedic talent. I mean, this was the place where he honed the skills of improvisation, character creation, and ensemble comedy that would really define his entire career.
And the momentum built so quickly from there, leading directly to Second City Television.
Or SCTV, yeah.
SCTV is where he gained just massive North American popularity. It was initially a Canadian show, but it became a cultural phenomenon after NBC picked it up in 1981. It really showcased a style of sophisticated, character-driven sketch comedy that felt entirely new at the time.
The critical recognition was immediate and very high. SCTV won Primetime Emmy Awards for Outstanding Writing 2 years in a row, in 1981 and 1982.
And the sources also note that Candy himself was personally nominated multiple times for his writing contributions during that period.
So this wasn't just acting, this was creation at a very high level. He was generating the material that they were performing.
To really understand his comedic foundation, we have to spend some time analyzing the characters he created. The critique specifically asks us to go beyond just listing names. So what did those four key figures, Johnny LaRue, Dr. Tongue, William B. Williams, and Mayor Tommy Shanks, what did they tell us about his range as a performer?
Well, what's fascinating here is how these characters tapped into completely different aspects of his comedic repertoire. Let's take Johnny LaRue, the unscrupulous street beat TV personality.
Right.
This character was pure hustle, a fast-talking, slightly desperate, low-level media operator. Candy played LaRue with this blend of false bravado and an underlying insecurity. He used vocal shifts and rapid, energized movement. It really showcased his ability to embody this kind of chaotic energy.
And then there's Dr. Tongue, the 3D horror auteur. That's a complete shift, moving into something highly stylized, absurd, and pompous.
Absolutely. Dr. Tongue was a vehicle for physical comedy and voice work. He was this self-serious filmmaker presenting these cheaply produced, over-the-top horror shows. It was a glorious send-up of all those genre tropes.
He used these exaggerated facial expressions and a highly affected accent.
Yes, demonstrating he could disappear completely into a truly theatrical, larger-than-life figure. It's the kind of character born from a deep observation of, B-movie cinema.
William B. Williams, the talk show sidekick, is different again. That role relies less on spectacle and more on reactive, supportive comedy.
William B. Williams was the definition of sycophantic. He was so easily amused, always laughing way too hard at the host's jokes, nodding enthusiastically. It was a masterclass in playing the yes man.
So it required a real discipline to play secondary like that.
And to enhance the host's performance, proving his ensemble skills, it shows a real humility in his comedy.
And finally, Mayor Tommy Shanks, Mellonville's corrupt mayor.
Shanks tapped into a more cynical brand of humor. He was the corrupt, small-time politician, using his authority for petty gain. Candy imbued him with this specific kind of low-stakes regional American corruption, relying on his large stature to suggest a kind of clumsy, entrenched power.
So collectively, these four characters,
The hustler, the auteur, the sidekick, and the politician.
they show that by the time he left SCTV, he had mastered chaotic energy, physical transformation, ensemble support, and social satire. A complete toolkit.
It was a complete toolkit. And even as SCTV was gaining fame, he was testing the waters of feature film. The sources mention his uncredited appearance as Paul in Class of 44, way back in 1973.
Right, and he was consistently working in Canadian productions, which must have provided necessary early experience. Films like The Clown Murders in '76 and Find the Lady, also in '76, often co-starring other Canadians.
These were lower-budget local productions, but they kept him sharp. And they established his presence on screen before he made that massive leap to Hollywood.
By 1979, the focus shifted decisively toward films. He took a brief hiatus from SCTV, even headlining a Toronto sketch show called Big City Comedy, as he simultaneously pursued opportunities south of the border.
That pivot was immediate and very strategic. He quickly secured supporting roles in major U.S. productions. We see him as Private Foley, a U.S. Army soldier in Steven Spielberg's chaotic 1979 comedy, 1941.
And then, perhaps more famously for comedy fans, as parole officer Burton Mercer in The Blues Brothers in 1980.
Working alongside his SCTV colleague Dan Aykroyd, of course.
That early film exposure led to some experimentation, too. He hosted the short-lived NBC program Roadshow in 1980, which the sources describe as improvisational journalism.
It seems like he was always seeking ways to combine his improvisational roots with more mainstream formats. But the true international breakthrough, the one that really put him on the map for mainstream American audiences, was Stripes in 1981.
Directed by Ivan Reitman, Candy played the lovable and surprisingly competent Army recruit Dewey Oxburger.
And Stripes was a massive hit. It successfully translated his SCTV brand of mild-mannered yet slightly eccentric likability into a major film context.
This success wasn't limited to live action either. That same year, he showcased his vocal range in the animated film Heavy Metal,
providing multiple voices. And what's specifically praised in the source material is his humorously lighthearted interpretation of the title character in the Den segment.
which confirms that his comedic presence transcended his physical appearance.
Exactly. His vocal charisma was just as potent.
The decision to leave SCTV for good in 1983 put him in direct contention for all the major Hollywood comedy projects, and that led to one of the most famous what-ifs in comedy history. Ghostbusters.
That story is highly indicative of his creative confidence at that time. He was approached for the role of the accountant Louis Tully in Ghostbusters in '84, a film that reunited many of his Second City and Stripes colleagues.
But the role ultimately went to Rick Moranis.
It did, because Candy and the production team, including director Ivan Reitman, had fundamentally conflicting ideas about how the character should be played.
That suggests a strong creative confidence on his part. He was willing to walk away from a guaranteed blockbuster role if he felt the interpretation wasn't right for him or for his vision.
It definitely shows a lack of willingness to compromise purely for the paycheck or the profile boost. He was committed to character integrity.
What was his idea for the character?
For Louis Tully, he reportedly envisioned a hyper-German character with a thick accent, maybe even wearing lederhosen. Yeah. Moranis' take, the tightly wound, nervous yuppie accountant, ultimately won out, and, it fit the New York setting better. It's a moment that highlights his strong, sometimes idiosyncratic character choices.
Yet, even without the starring role, he clearly still supported his friends. The sources confirm he contributed by chanting Ghostbusters in the background of the Ray Parker Jr. music video.
Right. And his true cinematic triumph in 1984, the role that really cemented his A-list status, was Splash.
Playing Freddie Bauer, the womanizing, scene-stealing brother of Tom Hanks's character.
Splash was a critical and commercial darling, and Candy was instantly seen as one of the best comedic supporting actors in the business.
And the success of Splash changed everything for him. The sources note that he quickly signed a 3-picture development and producing deal with Walt Disney Pictures.
And this wasn't just an acting contract. It was a move toward creative control, planning vehicles where he would executive produce and star.
That producing deal immediately resulted in his first true lead role in a Hollywood feature, Summer Rental in 1985, directed by the great Carl Reiner.
So he was transitioning from the best friend to the leading man, albeit typically playing the fish out of water or the perpetually confused everyman.
He also continued to take strong supporting roles that year. He appeared with Richard Pryor in Brewster's Millions.
And had a fun cameo in the musical Little Shop of Horrors in '86. This period showcased his high visibility, even though he experienced mixed box office results, like the disappointment of Armed and Dangerous with Eugene Levy.
But the stage was set.
The stage was set for the most successful and critically beloved chapter of his career, the partnership with John Hughes.
The John Hughes era is just foundational to how so many people remember John Candy. Hughes, the writer and director who really defined the angst and humor of the 1980s, found a perfect creative foil in Candy.
A perfect match.
We know the collaboration started with Candy's cameo in the Hughes-written National Lampoon's Vacation in '83.
But the collaboration became legendary with their subsequent efforts. The sources make it clear that the most iconic role, the one showcasing his full range of comedic and dramatic abilities, was Del Griffith in Planes, Trains, and Automobiles in 1987.
Which Hughes wrote and directed. It was a critical and commercial success, grossing nearly $50 million domestically.
We have to analyze why this partnership worked so well. Hughes was known for sharp dialogue and emotional truth, usually centered on teenagers. Candy, portraying an adult, brought something totally unique to Hughes's work.
He brought heart.
He brought heart. Hughes's comedy often required a core of vulnerability and genuine pathos underneath all the chaos. And Candy, particularly as Del Griffith, wasn't just a buffoon. He was lonely, overwhelmingly generous, and unintentionally disastrous.
He could ground the absurdity of a situation like being stranded in a blizzard with profound human desperation and likability.
He gave Hughes's adult comedies the emotional anchor they desperately needed. He proved he was more than capable of conveying deep emotion without even saying a word.
And it's essential to tie that performance back to his personal life, too. The sources note he lost 100 pounds for this role.
100 pounds.
That speaks volumes about his commitment, especially when we consider the health struggles he was already facing.
It's a clear indication that he was actively fighting his physical condition. Losing that much weight for a single role is a monumental effort, driven perhaps by a desire for longevity, or simply the physical demands of the character. It provides crucial context for the later tragic details.
The Hughes factory kept churning out hits. We saw The Great Outdoors in '88, which Hughes wrote, co-starring Dan Aykroyd.
And then Uncle Buck in '89, another huge success that Hughes wrote and directed, which cemented Candy's status as the lovable, oversized caretaker.
And, of course, the cameos that just entered the cultural lexicon, proving his worth even in brief appearances. He was Gus Polinski, the polka king of the Midwest, in Home Alone in 1990.
A legendary cameo. And he had an uncredited cameo in Career Opportunities in '91. These short appearances were memorable because he brought immediate, full-bodied characterization to the screen.
At the same time, he was focused on creative control, trying his hand at producing and directing.
Right. He produced and starred in the box office flop Who's Harry Crumb in 1989 and launched Camp Candy the same year.
Camp Candy shows his versatility in media. It was an NBC Saturday morning animated series that featured him as the voice star and producer.
And what's lovely about this project is the personal connection. His two children, Christopher Michael and Jennifer Ann, were featured in supporting voice roles. It was a true family project that even led to a brief Marvel Comics tie-in series.
He also directed the 1994 comedy television film Hostage for a Day. But before that, there's a fascinating anecdote that sheds light on his professional standing in the early 90s, the incident with Bette Midler.
This is a perfect illustration of a veteran performer defending his hard-won reputation. He was in discussions for the role of Bette Midler's husband in the film Stella in 1990, when Midler's team demanded he submit to a screen test, despite his decade of blockbuster success and critical acclaim.
He refused.
He refused. The sources quote him proclaiming, "Who the expletive does she think she is?" before immediately turning down the role.
Which ultimately went to John Goodman. What does this incident tell us about his mindset at that point?
It reveals a deep-seated professional pride, rooted in the rigorous training of Second City and his proven box office record. He felt his resume spoke for itself. He was accustomed to being offered roles, not auditioning for them. It shows a man who was confident in his value and unwilling to accept what he perceived as a professional slight, even if it meant missing another major studio picture.
That confidence fueled a deliberate move into dramatic territory. In 1991, he shocked many by taking a role in Oliver Stone's controversial epic, JFK.
He played Dean Andrews Jr., a shady Southern lawyer.
This was a critical choice for him. By accepting this dramatic role, he was actively working to shed the typecasting of the lovable buffoon.
He was demonstrating to the industry that the emotional depth he brought to Del Griffith could be channeled into serious, morally ambiguous characters. JFK provided him with the necessary credibility to expand his repertoire beyond pure comedy.
He returned to comedic triumph with one of his most beloved films, Cool Runnings, in 1993, which recounted the story of the first Jamaican bobsleigh team.
It is a huge success.
It was, and Cool Runnings showcased that signature blend of warmth and underdog spirit he had perfected. It provided a significant success in his final years.
But sadly, his last two films were released posthumously.
Yes. The sources detail the tragic necessity of completing his work on Wagons East in 1994 using a stunt double and special effects after his sudden passing.
In his final completed film, the satirical comedy Canadian Bacon, directed by Michael Moore, where he played the American sheriff Bud Boomer, was released a year later in 1995.
While his screen career was defined by comedy, his personal life maintained a strong sense of continuity and grounding. He married Rosemary Margaret Hobor in 1979, and they had two children, Christopher and Jennifer.
And the sources confirm his adherence to Roman Catholicism and his residence in Brentwood, Los Angeles.
One of the most fascinating aspects of his private life, connecting directly back to his Canadian identity and his high school dream, was his foray into sports ownership.
Yes, in 1991, Canny became a co-owner of the Canadian Football League's Toronto Argonauts.
And he was in a celebrity ownership group alongside some very powerful figures, businessman Bruce McNall and hockey legend Wayne Gretzky. This trio brought unprecedented glamour and attention to the CFL.
This was not a passive investment. The sources confirmed that this high-profile ownership group was aggressive. They famously attracted top talent like the highly touted NFL prospect wide receiver Raghib Ismail. Their energy and investment injected huge excitement into the league.
And they achieved success almost immediately. The team won the 1991 Grey Cup. For listeners who might be unfamiliar, the Grey Cup is one of the most culturally significant sporting events in Canada.
It's a huge deal.
Winning it was a massive personal achievement, connecting him back to his deepest national and athletic roots.
It truly was. And there's that compelling detail regarding the Grey Cup trophy itself. Initially, only McNell's name was etched onto the trophy among the owners.
Yeah.
It wasn't until 2007, 13 years after Candy's death,
Wow.
that the league officially rectified the oversight, adding his name and Gretzky's to the hallowed trophy. This retroactive recognition underscores the depth of his commitment to the team and to his Canadian heritage.
Now we have to turn to the significant private struggles that contrasted so starkly with his public image. The sources confirm that John Candy publicly shared his experiences of living with severe anxiety and panic attacks.
This is a critical pivot in our analysis. We are dealing with a man who was professionally the source of immense easygoing comfort and humor, the human teddy bear, the lovable goof.
Right.
Yet internally, he was battling conditions that are profoundly isolating and debilitating.
How do the source materials help us analyze that duality? The immense pressure to be that universally beloved, reliable, happy figure must have exacerbated the anxiety.
Oh, absolutely. The contrast is staggering. The roles he specialized in Del Griffith, Uncle Buck, required him to project overwhelming warmth, sincerity, and stability, even when the characters were flawed.
This performance of geniality demanded immense emotional labor.
It did. The sources suggest that the very size of his public persona, coupled with his physical stature, put pressure on him to be constantly on, amplifying the underlying anxiety and panic attacks he was facing when the cameras weren't rolling.
So the public adored him for the very qualities he likely found exhausting to maintain in private.
It seems that way. And this inherent conflict, the hilarious external life and the anxious internal reality, is essential context for what we need to discuss next.
This requires a sensitive approach. We are reviewing the facts surrounding the death of a beloved figure. The sources provide clear details. John Candy died in his sleep at 43 on March 4, 1994. He was in Durango, Mexico, on location filming Wagons East.
The official cause of death was a heart attack. In analyzing the sources, we understand that his physical condition placed him at severe risk. He openly struggled with obesity, weighing over 375 pounds at certain points in his life.
And that was compounded with the strong family history we discussed earlier, his father dying at 35. The risk factors were just tragically aligned.
They were.
Let's review those specific factual risk factors mentioned in the source material as they convey the seriousness of his condition and the hidden battles he fought. Beyond the strong family history and obesity, what else contributed to the strain on his cardiovascular system?
The sources explicitly cite heavy smoking a pack of cigarettes a day as a factor. They also cite struggles with alcohol abuse and, at times, cocaine use. These elements, combined with the extreme weight and the genetic predisposition.
It created a lethal combination of cardiovascular stressors.
A lethal combination. This was a multifaceted internal battle happening simultaneously with his booming professional life.
However, we have to ensure we contextualize this not as a lack of caring, but as a struggle against deep-seated habits and genetics. The sources emphasize his efforts to fight these conditions.
That is crucial. This was not a passive acceptance of ill health. The sources emphasize his deep concern, especially because of his father's early death. He frequently engaged in dieting and exercised intensely with trainers.
The commitment to lose 100 pounds for planes, trains, and automobiles wasn't a quick fix.
No, it was a visible, dramatic effort in his ongoing fight against his physical fate. He was trying to manage conditions that ultimately overwhelmed him.
His premature death left several projects unfinished, and this leads to one of the most unsettling pieces of Hollywood folklore, the theory of the cursed projects.
This specific pattern of tragedy is genuinely chilling. Candy was attached to 3 specific high-profile roles that were never ultimately filmed. First, Ignatius J. Reilly in the long-planned adaptation of John Kennedy Toole's A Confederacy of Dunces.
Second, the role of Atuk in the adaptation of Mordecai Richler's satirical novel, The Incomparable Atuk.
And third, the lead role of Roscoe Fatty Arbuckle in a playing biopic about the troubled silent film star.
And the sources confirm the unsettling pattern. These 3 projects, Dunces, Atuk, and Arbuckle, have gained this legendary status as cursed because John Candy was not the only comedic genius attached to them who died suddenly before filming.
That's the crux of the folklore. John Belushi, Sam Kinison, Chris Farley, and John Candy were all attached to all 3 of these film projects at various points in time.
And all 4 of these hugely talented, physically large, and publicly beloved comedic actors struggled with substance abuse and health issues.
And all 4 died before these projects could be realized.
It raises a profound question beyond mere coincidence. Why were these specific roles, Ignatius J. Reilly, a grotesque anti-hero figure, Fatty Arbuckle, a troubled, disgraced star, Atuk, a massive fish out of water, why were they so magnetizing to this specific group of troubled comedic actors?
I think the roles resonated because they spoke directly to themes common among this group. The burden of great talent, the complexity of being physically large in Hollywood, and the inherent loneliness and darkness, often masked by public comedy.
So they were drawn to characters that allowed them to explore the darkness that often lay beneath their own humorous personas.
Exactly. It's a recurring tragic motif in comedy history.
Beyond the Cursed Trilogy, there were other near misses. He was slated to collaborate with John Hughes and Sylvester Stallone on a comedy titled Bartholomew versus Neff about feuding neighbors.
And his voice work career was also tragically cut short. The role of Red Feather the Turkey in Disney's animated film Pocahontas was written specifically for him, but the character was ultimately removed from the film after his death.
And finally, the horror giant Stephen King wanted Candy for the lead role of Billy Halleck, the overweight, cursed lawyer in the film adaptation of his novel Thinner.
It's quite a list of what might have been.
Despite the abruptness of his passing, John Candy's legacy has been consistently honored, ensuring that the sincerity and joy of his work remain in the public consciousness. His funeral was held at St. Martin of Tours Catholic Church in Los Angeles.
His closest colleagues played a major role in his farewell. Dan Aykroyd and Catherine O'Hara delivered the eulogies, and O'Hara's sister, Mary Margaret O'Hara, performed her moving song, Dark Dear Heart.
It really speaks to the intense loyalty he commanded within the Canadian comedy community.
It does.
He was entombed in the mausoleum at Holy Cross Cemetery in Culver City. And the sources include the interesting specific detail that his crypt is situated directly above that of legendary actor Fred MacMurray.
Shortly after his death, the Second City, the institution that shaped his career, produced a special memorial service that was broadcast across Canada in March 1994.
And formal recognition soon followed. He was posthumously inducted into Canada's Walk of Fame in 1998.
The honor that truly cements his place in Canadian culture, however, occurred in May 2006, when Canada Post honored him as one of the first 4 entertainers ever featured on a Canadian postage stamp.
And his home city showed its deep appreciation. Toronto Mayor John Tory proclaimed October 31st, 2020, which would have been his 70th birthday, as John Candy Day.
His influence is embedded in the film world, too. The film Blues Brothers 2000, a sequel to the film in which he appeared, is dedicated to him, along with John Belushi and Cab Calloway.
And his commitment to Canadian football was celebrated when Dan Aykroyd hosted a formal tribute to him during the 2007 Grey Cup festivities in Toronto.
Academically, his connection to his roots is memorialized. The John Candy Visual Arts Studio was dedicated in his honor at his alma mater, Neil McNeil Catholic High School.
This is fitting given his relationship with the school. He reportedly returned often and once shared advice there.
Right, he said, "My success is simply rooted in the values and discipline and respect for others that I was taught at Neil McNeil." He always linked his success back to foundational non-Hollywood values.
There was also a proposal for a major, lasting formal tribute. The chair of the Canadian Film and Television Academy publicly suggested that the Canadian Screen Awards be officially nicknamed the Candies.
Both in his honor and because the name is a witty suggestion of Canada.
Exactly. Finally, we see his influence reaching the next generation. Conan O'Brien shared an encounter where he, as a young, aspiring writer at Harvard, told Candy he was thinking of trying comedy.
And Candy's response was firm and definitive. You don't try comedy, you do it or you don't do it.
That piece of advice perfectly encapsulates the serious professionalism underlying his joyous exterior. You have to commit fully.
And the enduring interest in that commitment is confirmed by the 2025 documentary John Candy, I Like Me, directed by Colin Hanks and produced by Ryan Reynolds, which opened the Toronto International Film Festival.
It's clear that his life story, replete with great creative success and profound private struggle, continues to hold immense weight and fascination decades later.
It does. And as we conclude this thorough analysis, I would invite you to reflect deeply on the duality we've uncovered. Consider the public joy and massive laughter he created for the world versus the immense private pressure, the severe anxiety, and devastating health struggles he was simultaneously facing. What does this profound contrast tell us about the hidden, often immense human cost required to maintain a public, universally adored comedic persona?
That is a crucial question to explore further on your own. We've covered everything today, from the chaotic hustle of his SCTV characters like Johnny LaRue, through the emotional depth of Del Griffith, and the tragic circumstances of his final years. We appreciate you sharing the sources that allowed for this exploration.
John Candy's contribution to film and comedy was built on genuine sincerity and deeply committed character work. That talent and that sincerity resonate just as strongly today.
Thanks for listening.